It's bad accident on minding stuff.
Yeah, that was not fun. Not fun at all. That's both ways too, which is like I hit the I-90 traffic going to East Greenbush and then hit it on the way back.
Exactly.
How did that happen on both sides? I ended up taking the Loudonville exit and Albany Shaker. I'd still be on the highway. All right, so good morning, everybody. Good morning to everybody on the WebEx. Today is a special day in Ireland. It's day 2 of DrupalCon, and we actually have some people who are attending DrupalCon live in person. One of those people, Tom Atkins, is he's going to be facetiming us to give us sort of an update about how DrupalCon's going, talk about his experience thus far. He was actually in, if you're aware, do you guys know what the Drupal pre-note is? Or DrupalCon pre-note? Basically, the DrupalCon pre-note, what they do is they have like a funny little skit that they do. It's like 40 minutes or so, 20 minutes, 40 minutes depending, and they have like a little skit. This year it was the themer versus the developer, and like how they could work together to make great Drupal sites. And basically they do this little theme, and Tom was actually in the Drupal pre-note playing guitar for the song. So that was pretty neat. So he's there right now working on he's doing some different Drupal sessions. So there's lots of different sessions that are happening. You can actually view all the sessions online if you just do a Google search for DrupalCon pre-note or just DrupalCon Dublin. It'll pull up all of the sessions that have been done. They're filming them and then releasing them out on YouTube. So what we're going to try to do is we're actually going to try to simulcast the presentation that Tom is going to be attending at about 9:20, 9:25 or so, which is a presentation on Drupal 8 theming. And after that, we will be we'll talk a little bit more about the Drupal Beginners Corner, where we're going to talk about how to install Drupal 8 on a new server. It's a nice little setup to get it up and running. It's a little bit different than Drupal 7. So, excuse me. So right now we're waiting for Tom to connect. He said he said about 7 minutes ago. Yeah. So we should be hearing from him in about 10 minutes. He should be calling in. So what I'm going to do here is actually, let's open up our browser, and we'll start the process for Drupal 8 installation. So what we're going to use is we're going to use this platform called Drupal VM. And what that does is it's actually a local development environment for Drupal that will allow you to install, develop, configure all of your Drupal stuff right on your local machine, rather than doing it on a server or something like that, which gives you the capability to really, work on getting new features and stuff developed locally without having to break the dev database. That being said, so if we go to Drupal.org, you'll see here that right now the latest release is 8.1.10, but there's actually an 8.2 release that's currently in Release Candidate 2. So this says Release Candidate 1 is available. They didn't actually post a news posting for Release Candidate 2. I'm actually using RC2 on testing it out for one of our Drupal 8 sites that we're getting ready to launch. Because RC1 had some weird bug in it with the REST module that's included in Drupal 8 core that basically you couldn't do an update from 8.1 to 8.2 RC1 without running into this error. So, that being said, all right, Tom said he'll be calling in 3 minutes. So that being said, what we'll be doing today is installing the 8.1 branch rather than the RC branch. Now, let me just really quickly explain how these release candidates work. So, excuse me. No, that's not what I wanted. Oh, it's right down here. So I just want to explain how Drupal 8 versioning differs than Drupal 7. So Drupal 7 had just a dot release, so it was 7.0, 7.1, all the way up to, I think they're at 7.51 maybe right now. Oh, there's Tom. Don't answer on my iPhone. Answer on my call him.
Hello. How's it going, bud?
Hey Tom, so you're being broadcast to the screen behind me here.
Oh God.
Okay. Should have shaved. You should have shaved.
Yeah, my shaver did not have the correct power adapter for Ireland, so I'm gonna have a full beard when I get home. That's the way life goes.
Great. So how's DrupalCon been?
It's been awesome. Everybody's got to go to these things if you're interested in Drupal because the mind can only take 4 or 5 days. It's just, I mean, I have most of the hair when I was in Ireland, you know.
Yeah.
So
long curly locks.
How's everything at home?
Good. We're talking about Drupal 8 and getting that installed while we were waiting for you to give us a call here. So.
Looks like it's about to start. About 2 minutes. I'll give you guys a look-see.
Wow. Packed. Or not packed, but lots of seats.
No, it's still real early yet, but I don't know if you saw it played here.
Yeah. I was gonna say.
Which was absolutely a blast.
That sounds awesome. Was that your own guitar you brought?
Oh yeah. And I smoked it through the rain and Irish trains and everything. Next time I'm gonna get a place that's a little closer to the DrupalCon.
Yeah.
But next time it's not gonna be that big of a problem because that's Baltimore.
As when they did the pre-note at the end, they have all the thank yous at the end, and Tom's name was like right next to Dries. So I was like, yeah, Tom's right next to Dries. It was really exciting.
Yeah, you gotta see that picture of Chris Adamita in New Orleans. There's a picture with Dries, and then we also he's a very accessible person. He really is. He's very nice.
Yeah.
He didn't remember my horrible Joomla question from 5 years ago. Thank God. But anyway, so listen, I'm gonna set you guys up, so hopefully you have a good view, and hopefully the audio comes out good. All right.
Yeah, if the audio is not good, we'll probably hang up and continue on with the presentation for Drupal 8 this morning. So.
If you hang up, I won't cry.
Okay. So, all right, Tom. It's good seeing you, man.
I'm gonna flip it over.
All right, so this will be how is the audio coming through, or is it choppy, or? It's all right. It's a little low. A little low.
Hold on.
Is there like a mic thing or anything?
Like my cable, you're plugging it.
Oh, it'll go through there.
It should be able to come through.
Here, if I do, let's try that.
And you will not believe how prepared I am for this.
Better? Okay. Sorry about that. I had the audio coming through my laptop. I forgot that I had to switch it to HDMI.
All right, hold on. looking at the ceiling for a moment.
This is very unprofessional, Tom.
Edit this part. Quip.
Yeah.
There we go.
While Tom's getting set up here, I think we'll mute ourselves here.
How many people were there today?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the room. There were 10 on the WebEx. There's a big accident on 990. Both sides of the highway were completely backed up to like at least an exit and a half.
Oh.
Yeah, not fun.
All right. Well, it wasn't me. There we go. Let's see how that. See how it works. Wait a minute. That good? Good. Got to get it right. Wait till you see the technology I use to get this great shot. How's that?
That's good. It's like he's getting ready to go.
Yep. Funny thing with FaceTime is there's just no 2x. So the shot you get is the shot you get. But should be good.
And I
see how it goes.
I can go full
I'll keep
screen
peeking
on
over.
mine.
Actually, it might be easier.
Just make sure it's like really shaky like that the whole time, okay?
It can't be. The only shaking that's going on is from the knowledge. The knowledge download.
Knowledge download.
Imploding the brain.
Each time you get hit with a new fact, the screen will shake. So what's been your favorite session so far?
Probably the one with I just came from, which is Drupal 8 theming accessibility. The one I mean, it was so well done. I'm gonna send you the link on the. You put the whole thing's up on GitHub. It's a theme for Drupal 8, but it from every aspect of it is accessible. You know, most of the themes are. But she added a couple things, and then she's making some patches to Drupal 8 at the sprint tomorrow, so they'll probably be in 8.2.
Oh, that's awesome.
And 8.2 also looks really amazing too with the block, the way they changed the blocks.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to play with that at all yet, but on my sprints on Friday, I'll probably find my friend Joe from Canada, and he'll give me something to do, and hopefully we'll be able to get another contribution in. Greg Marshall has been on me to take the test again. I didn't have the heart to tell him no.
Thank you,
There
everyone,
you go. He's starting.
for coming to the presentation. This session is about Drupal 8 theming in depth. I'm expressing some of my opinions how theming should be done in Drupal 8, and you don't have to agree with me, or you can feel free to disagree. But this is my opinion on how theming should be done in Drupal 8. I'm excited that so many of you have came to listen about this topic today. So I guess we are going to have a good session today. Hopefully you will have also good questions in the end of the session. So let's start by introducing myself. My name is Lauri Eskola. I'm a Finnish Drupal developer working for a Finnish Drupal agency called Druid. We are a Drupal agency hiring 27 people located in Helsinki and Amsterdam. Currently, I work from Australia. I live in Melbourne. I like kittens, and I do some Drupal 8 contributions. So let's start with the problem that we are trying to solve with these things that we are talking about today. So the first and the largest problem that I find in Drupal theming is that we have a word Drupal themer. I would like to kill the whole word Drupal themer. We should instead have just themers or designers. So what does that mean? The problem is that theming Drupal usually is so complicated that you need someone who understands Drupal to theme it. But by changing the way we theme Drupal, it wouldn't have to be always that difficult. Maybe some of the tasks that themers are doing could be outsourced for the backend developers or some other people, and then you can have just designers working on your design. We will come back to these issues later, and I will explain how the steps that we've taken solve these issues. Another problem about Drupal theming is that the whole Drupal frontend has been built data-driven. What this means is that when you're looking at the design as a themer, we shouldn't have to be thinking about what something on the design is as data. So let's say if you look at content, we would have to think that, okay, this is a node or this is a user, because the whole Drupal frontend has been mapped to these entities or types of data. Instead, as a themer, we would like to think, okay, this is a component which will frame this data in this format. It could be either user entity, node entity. The themer shouldn't have to care about what type of data is being printed in a design. But sadly, in Drupal, we have to think about that because the frontend has been mapped to the data. Another issue that we have is that big part of the work is overlapping between site builder and front-end developer or themer. What that means is it's very difficult for a themer to start theming a feature at the same time with the site builder because they have some overlapping work that needs to be done. In order for something to be able to be themed, the site building needs to be done or the back-end development needs to be done. So I'm going to explain how we can get rid of this issue. And also the one huge problem that we face is that achieving dry, which is do not repeat yourself, is very difficult. Usually when you are creating different variable, different variation of a template, you would have to copy the whole template, and you would have the same piece of markup in multiple different templates. Also, this is something we can probably get rid of. Let's see. So let's start with very basics of Twig. I know many of you probably have already used Twig. How many of you have used already Twig? Almost everyone. That's great. So I'm going to go very quickly. I just wanted to include this since it would be such a shame if there would be people who wouldn't understand Twig and they couldn't understand what I'm talking about because of that. But because it seems like almost everyone knows about Twig already, so I'm going to go this part very quickly. So here's example Twig file, a very simple Twig file that I'm using to print a list. So in Twig, there is three different syntaxes. There is the curly brackets, which is for printing something. There is the curly bracket and the percentage, which is for doing something. And there is the curly bracket and the bracket, which is for the curly bracket and the hash, which is for commenting. So here you can see a very simple comment in a Twig file. Here you can see how we use the curly bracket and percentage sign for loop. And inside of the for loop, we are printing an item. So you can see the printing syntax. So in Twig, when we are accessing data from a variable, we only use one single syntax. There is no multiple syntaxes that need to be used. Everything is accessed with the simple dot syntax. So it doesn't matter whether you are accessing an array key or object property or even calling a method, you will always use the same syntax to access the data. One of the very, very neat things is that you can even call with this simple syntax the method using the get or is method convention. So let's say if a node would have method called getPublished, you could just say node.publish and it would call the getPublished method. Very, very simple and very awesome for the front-end developers because they don't have to understand what is the difference between arrays and objects. Twig also has includes. we are probably going to do lots of includes during this presentation, so it's good to know how includes work. So Twig include is essentially the same as you would have in PHP. You can just include another file inside this file. But one of the very fancy features that we have in Twig is that you can say only. And what does that word do? It tells that while we are including another template inside this template, only provide these variables for the other template. Everything else inside, all the other variables available inside the template where we are calling the include won't be provided for the other template, which gives a nice isolation between the templates and allows us to do pretty neat things. So what I'm doing in this example, I'm just including a link.html.twig file with two variables. I'm giving a link variable and text variable. I'm finding the data from the node object for the link, and I'm just giving a simple text that I'm declaring myself inside the Twig file. I'm using the Twig filter key to make it translated. Very, very simple example of using include in Drupal. Another super cool feature that Twig has is Twig blocks. I hope you have already figured out this. I've heard some people are suspicious whether it's good to use the Twig blocks or not. I think using Twig blocks is pretty awesome because even though it adds a little bit of complexity, but after you understand how it works, it's the most awesome thing in Twig, probably. So how blocks work is that you can define in a template small regions that you can override with another template. And on this example, I have the page template where I define two blocks, content and footer. By the way, Twig blocks are not Drupal blocks, they're totally different. I want to override the content block on my front page. I want to have different text on the front page, on the content block. I will create another template, page-front, which will override the page template. I will tell extends, it will extend the page template, so it will take everything from that template and override the small parts that we tell it to override using the blocks. So when you're using the extend syntax, you are not able to provide any markup outside of the blocks. It will throw an error if you do that. So I'm modifying the block content. Everything else will remain the same. So H1 title will be printed as it is there, and the footer will be printed as it is there. And then we have a third cool feature, which is Twig embed. And this is a combination of include and block. So you can define blocks in a template, and you can embed that, and you can specify block overrides, just like you would do while you're extending. And using these three different technologies, you can do quite a lot of good things. So let's proceed to what can we do using these tools. So component-based theming is pretty much the future where all the Drupal themers should head towards, at least from my point of view. I'm not the only one thinking like this. So what is this whole thing about? So component-based theming is about thinking that instead of delivering the customer pages, we should be delivering them systems that include components. So when you're theming a page, you should think that this page consists of some elements that are reusable in other contexts. And when you're creating another page for the customer, they could build it using the elements that you've already built for them during building the previous page. So what is component itself? So components should be self-contained, reusable. So self-contained means that the component only modifies itself. It doesn't go outside of it. So let's say if you have a component called button, the button component won't modify the header component. It will only modify the button component. It will only modify itself. It should be reusable. It doesn't mean that it's always reused, but it should be something that can be reused. It should be also nestable, so it should be something that can be inside another component. Components in the most common scenario would consist markup and some kind of styling. It could also consist JavaScript. Let's say if you have this component, you could have this component which has JavaScript show and hide functionality after a certain number of list items. Let's say you want to show 3 items first, and then the rest of them are hidden, and with JavaScript you would show them. That kind of JavaScript could be inside a component. Sometimes components could have other aspects, maybe icons, something like that. Not always. Components could have them loaded from somewhere else also. By the way, while I'm talking about components, I'm not talking about any specific design system. Any design system could work like this. Using these tools that I'm talking about today, you could practically include any design system into Drupal. So this is the workflow that I'm using myself in my project. So what we do is that we have a base theme, which includes a component library. The component library is also reusable in other systems, not only in Drupal. You could use it in a project using React. It's just Tweak and CSS and JavaScript, nothing Drupal specific. But that is included in the base theme, and multiple different Drupal sites are using that same base theme. We have a default theme, which we use as an integration layer. On the default theme, we simply map the components into the right places on the page. I will show how that happens. So essentially, on the base theme, we don't have any template overrides. No templates, no block templates, no region template, no page template. There's only a component library so that it can be loaded in the Drupal. And that component library, like I said, it could be used to multiple different purposes. So let's say if you are doing style guide-centric development, you could use that component library to build a style guide, or you could use it to build the application styling. So the component library should be reusable and swappable. So you can essentially use it for anything, or give it to the customer's other companies developing their other projects. So that's about what is component. Let's create our first component in Drupal. So I'm using a very, very simple component, card component. I think the picture is from Google's style guide, so thanks for them. So we have a title, we have a little bit of text, and we have one link. Very, very simple component. Most likely when you're building a component, you will have to create more complicated components, but I'm going to start with the most basic one on this presentation. So what's inside that component? We have just one Tweak file, and we have one CSS file. I'm not even using any CSS preprocessing on this very simple example. So we have a little bit of markup where we are printing 4 variables, and we have some CSS, which sets a border and some margin and padding. That's all. Very, very simple. I will place the component into it.
Just wanted to really quickly say, though we can't read the code on the screen as he's presenting it, the ideas and the concepts that he's talking about, so like extending twig templates and importing different things like that, those are really important, and we can watch this presentation afterwards and see the code samples. But just understanding, like getting the feel of, you know, this is a presentation that was big enough to be presented to DrupalCon is really what we're trying to pull off here today.
This approach, we will have to figure out how we can fix these functionalities to work with this kind of approach. But if you're building something like this for the customers, like I am, we are willing to make a trade-off between these two things. We are willing to sacrifice some of the features and use this method. I will have to do on the Drupal side is enable components module. Components module is a very, very simple module which allows us to add extra namespaces for Twig. So this allows us to load Twig files from other folders than just the templates folder. So as you saw, I placed the Twig file under the components folder. We want to add a namespace for that folder. So what I'm doing, I'm specifying in the info.yaml file a new component library. The first line, where it says theme name, is the name of the namespace that we want to create. So I'm just using the very simple namespace called theme name. So by default, theme name would be providing namespace for the templates folder, not for the components folder. But I'm adding both of them for the namespace. So both of these folders will be looked for when something is being loaded from the theme name namespace. This allows us to load the button.html on the Twig file from the components folder. So in order to be able to debug Twig, we will have to enable Twig debugging in the services.yaml file. It will print this kind of sections inside your markup. They are very useful for finding which template we need to use. It will also disable the Twig compiling into PHP so that it will reload the Twig file on each page load. You will also need to disable caching while cleaning, because otherwise you will have to clear your cache after every change. I will add these lines into the settings PHP and a few lines to the services.yaml. There is a file called example development.settings.php and local.services.yaml, something like that, which you can use to do this. So this is all built in Drupal, but you will have to add these lines in order to these changes take effect immediately. How I will debug the variables while I'm debugging Twig, I will use the hint module, which is provided by Devil. It is the best tool out there right now, at least as far as I know. It will provide all the different properties of the object. It will provide the methods, and if it's an array, it will just simply print all the lists, all the list items. Yeah, it's a good debugging tool. So this is how our list looks currently. This is the default theme of Drupal. This is how Bartik would print out the articles. You can see that there's some things that we don't need, which will be removed soon once we apply our new template. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to find the right template to begin. I can find this kind of block where the node is being printed. I will choose the node-article-teaser, which is specific for the article node type in the teaser view mode. So we only want to do it for the articles in the teaser view mode. I will create a new template file. So I won't copy the node template to create this template. I will just create a plain file with this file name. And what I will do here is I will tell include from theme name /card.html.twig. Then we'll provide the component that we created. These variables, I will give it the title variable, I will give the text. I will give a link URL and a link text. So in the template, I'm now fetching the data from the variables that I have available inside the node template and make them make sense for the themer inside the component. Inside the component, the variable names are very clear, very obvious, and all the magic happens now inside this template. This is where all the Drupal theming happens. The component file is very clean, and it's something that any themer could build. So after making this change, we can see that our articles start to look a little bit more like what we are trying to achieve. All the extra data is gone, and but we have all the essential things inside. So what we have to do next is that we need to have some assets for that component. So how does this work? In Drupal 8, everything has to be loaded through libraries. You probably knew that already if you've done any Drupal development so far, because everyone has to create a library in order to be able to provide CSS files. But because we want CSS file to be mapped to this small piece of markup, we want it to be only loaded whenever that markup is being loaded. We will create the library, and then we will tell inside the Twig file attach library, and we will tell which library we want to be adding for this piece of markup. So this way, if the card component doesn't exist on the page, the CSS file that you have for card doesn't get loaded. So let's say if you have some very complicated components that have lots of CSS, but they will be only printed on one page. The CSS would be loaded only on one page. Also because everything is very self-contained, all of your components should be self-contained. It doesn't really matter if some of the CSS files are missing from the page. Because if that piece of markup is not there, it shouldn't affect anything else anyway. So after adding these few lines, our layout starts to look pretty much how it looks on the design. It is also possible to include multiple assets for a single component. So if anyone is using Smax, you can absolutely include multiple assets from a single component. So let's say if you want to have a CSS file for state, you could include its own CSS file for the state, and Drupal will load it into the correct place, correct order. It will place it after the component, and it will override the component. Therefore, you can also include JavaScript in the very, very same way. If you need to detach any inherited asset, like let's say if you have a button class on the component, you would have to remove some of the CSS being loaded, because class C provides some markup for the button component. It adds some margin for the button class. How that happens, we have library override, which allows you to do lots of magical things, but I think the most common use case is to just remove a single file away from being loaded. And how that works is that you say libraries overriding inside the info.java. Inside the libraries override, you have to tell which library are you overriding. So the first word is the extension where the library is being loaded from, where the library has been created. The second one is the name of the library. So I'm removing a CSS file from the base library inside class CT. Then you have to tell, okay, this is CSS that we are removing. Then after that, you have to tell, okay, which Smax group is this from? And then you tell the path of the CSS file and say false, so it won't be loaded anymore. You can also replace CSS files and extend existing libraries with your own CSS files, but personally I don't know why would anyone use these features, but I guess they are nice to have, maybe someone needs them. In case you are looking for these more complicated use cases for libraries, I suggest to go to this blog post. It's written by David Hernandez, and it's a pretty extensive blog post about lots of libraries magic. So I will create another component to make it look like exactly how we created, so everyone remembers how this happened. So I'm creating a container for the cards. This is also a very simple component. You can see the attach library that I'm already adding here. I'm also just printing a items list and adding some CSS to display them in a flex mode so that they will be aside each other nicely. I will create a library just like the way I did before. This is a new component, like you can see, it's a card container. And I will find a template name for this use case. So I will have to look for the views override. This doesn't work out of the box in Drupal. So if you want to see the views template overrides, there is a patch inside Drupal.org that you can use to view these template overrides, very handy. But if you need to see which template override there is available for your use, I would go download that patch, and it will show template overrides that are available for the use. So the integration for this piece of markup is a little bit more complicated, and this is where the issues start to be visible. So we get a pretty complicated array structure inside the views template. So we need to start actually modifying what is inside the arrays and start creating new arrays. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a new items array where inside a loop of all of the rows, and I have to just copy the row of content on the main level of that items array. So what you want to avoid inside your components is any Drupal specific things. You don't want to be printing the Drupal data structure inside components. So in case you have any of this magic that you need to do, I would do it in the integration template instead of doing it inside the component. Because the component should be as clean as possible. It should be something that someone could use in any other use case. So this same thing could be done also in a preprocess function, but because I wanted to avoid using preprocess functions and use the template instead as an example, I did it inside template. This is also very, in this case, if I would want to make it in an auto way, if I don't want to, if I'm unable to modify the array structure, what you could do also is to use the trick box. You could create a block for the for loop and replace the one for loop inside the trick template. And then you could use the Drupal data structure. Then you could access the data from the Drupal data structure using the embed, and it would be in the single file, all the Drupal specific things. So after applying these styles, our components start to look pretty neat. It looks almost like on the layout. So there is a Drupal.org issue about making Drupal work component-based by default. It's a very, very complicated issue because of like if you think what we just did, it basically broke lots of things inside Drupal. So in order to make Drupal core actually support something like this, we would need to make lots of changes for the way, let's say, quick edit module or contextual module works. And there is an issue about this thing in the Drupal.org, and there's going to be plenty of people working on trying to find a solution for this thing. So if you are interested about this, I suggest you come maybe talk to me or just go to the Spring Lounge and see if someone is working on issues related to this. If you want to get started with any of the design systems, there is Drupal projects which are already showcasing how to integrate into Pattern Lab or KSS style guiding. So there is a Pattern Lab team, which is a base team for using Pattern Lab, and there is a Zen team, which is using KSS style guide. And they both are working pretty much a very similar way as I showed today, and they show how powerful it could be to use some of these design systems on your project. So let's go back to the problems in Drupal teaming. So the first problem was that there is a teamer versus designer. So we don't want to have Drupal teamer anymore. So this problem is basically solved because you could have your designers work on the component, and they could create their style guide out of the component. They don't have to deal with Drupal. The backend developer could do the integration between the component and their backend magic. At least I hope so. And that way, Drupal teamers wouldn't have to be Drupal teamers anymore. They could just focus on creating components. They could review their components using a style guide, and then the backend developers would be using those components. Also, when I've talked to the backend developers, they would be happy to have something like this, because they could just build new features just like this, like very, very fast, because they could use the existing components that someone has built for their backend magic. Also, using this kind of approach is not data-driven, because you can basically define your own structure inside components. You don't have to create a component called node. You can create a component called card, like I did on the example. Inside the card component, you can bring a node, like I did, or you could bring a user just as well. There's no single data type that it will work with. Also, the overlapping work between roles, the situation is way less worse, since the teamers can start working on their teaming, because they could build the component inside components folder. They don't have to wait for the site builder to finish the site building or site build themselves, which allows things to move faster forward, because multiple things could happen at the same time. And the last point, achieving drive is very difficult, because Drupal was mapped into the data types and everyone was just copying the templates. But now that we are using components, even though you have lots of templates to map the data into the components, it's pretty simple to write those integration templates, and they don't contain any markup. So whenever you need to refactor markup, it happens inside the components. You only need to modify a single file to modify, let's say, the card component or a button component. You don't have to go to modify all the different node templates. Oh, and I'm using button component also on the views template. You would have to modify maybe 50 templates if you are using the very, very traditional Drupal way of theming. But instead, if you have the components, you're loading the button for each of these templates, and if you modify the markup inside the button template, it will show on all of these places, even though you probably end up having more files than you used to have in the past. So I suggest everyone to come to the Frontend United, which is in Atkins. It's in May next year. It's one of my personal favorite events, so I hope to see as many of you as possible over there. I've heard that it's going to be warm and the food is good and beer is cold, so see you there. And now we have lots of time for the questions, which I hope you will have. So there is 2 mics over there. If you have any questions, you can line up for the mic, and I will be happy to answer to your questions. Go ahead.
Yep. So first of all, thank you. Can you give an example of using JavaScript with the libraries that JavaScript gets attached after probably an AJAX request? So if I have some JavaScript acting on the cards that are maybe loaded by a big pipe, or and later on AJAX request gets attached one more time.
So are you asking about how attaching JavaScript happens when using BigPipe?
Yeah, actually I run into some problems with BigPipe and attaching libraries via the templates. So have you run into problems there? BigPipe module is experimental, and I know actually about this issue. And currently there is no good way to get over with this if you want to load the JavaScript file inside the template. So if you're using BigPipe, you would have to include those JavaScript files in the required libraries so that it's loaded always. Yeah, and yeah, it's a shame. But the BigPipe module is still under development. So I think that it's going to be fixed at a certain point. But do the libraries get attached even if I have like an AJAX request? So maybe
yes. So that's so when you have AJAX request, the style sheets and JavaScript files will be attached, but there is a slight delay, which is going to be annoying, but they will be attached essentially. Any other questions?
I have a question regarding the embedding of twig template. I ran into the issue that I have a template, then you want to embed another twig template inside it, but then on the preprocess function, on the preprocessing of the parent template, you need to build the variables for the child template. How do you avoid this in Drupal? If it's possible.
Yeah, so was the question that if you use, so there is no way to duplicate preprocess functions into multiple functions. That's a big question, and what we are doing while we are facing this kind of problem, we try to move as much as possible from the preprocess functions into the template. So that it would happen inside the template instead of in the preprocess functions, and then it's something that can be duplicated in Twig and can be run from multiple places.
Yeah, but then Drupal suggests doing the processing the data in the processing stage of the template.
Preprocess functions in general are something that we are discussing if we should remove them or not, because in many cases, what happens inside preprocess functions is something that should happen actually before the data is put inside the theme system. The reason why preprocess functions still are what they are is because it's very difficult from Drupal to know what kind of data that a themer wants inside their template. But in many cases, the right solution would be to add the correct variables to the hook theme implementation, so that you would have it during the wall pipeline inside the theme system. And then you would have just very, very small modifications inside preprocess functions. So preprocess functions, what they are meant for, a good example would be you want to format a date inside a correct format. That would be something that you could do inside preprocess functions. But another example of something that you shouldn't do inside preprocess functions, let's say, load a new entity and put that data inside the template. That's not something that should happen in the preprocess functions. So I don't know, can you give a little bit more specific?
Well, in our case, we had two theming twig templates. Each one of them, behind them, they have only one variable, an entity. And based on that entity, the parent template constructs different variables to print out, and then the second template takes the same entity and builds other variables. So in order to, when we use embed, the variables needed to be defined in the preprocessing stage of the parent template, because you couldn't call the preprocessing stage for the embed.
Yeah, so I suggest that instead of just giving a template an entity, that template should be given specific variables that it should be printing. So like on my example, I had title, text, and link. That's what template should be getting. That's closer to what template should be getting, instead of getting an entity and do whatever you want with this entity. Because entity is like putting raw data inside the template. Instead, template should be outputting variables that it gets. And it should be like title, body, image, things like that. So you should already have some kind of an idea what data will be printed inside the template on the hook theme implementation. So it should exist from the wall pipeline. That's at least my point of view for this.
Yeah, but then if you call the same hook theme multiple times, you need to recalculate the same values for the variables based on the entity every time.
Yes.
Instead of doing only once on the processing stage.
Yes.
So that's why we thought of transmitting the.
So then you can create a render element for that. That's also a valid use case. So you can create a render element which has a pre-render function for converting an entity inside the render array. Are you familiar with the render element? Or yeah, good. So that's the absolute way of doing that. And there's plenty of examples in Drupal core how that should be done. Good example would be to look maybe Form API is doing lots of things with render elements. You can look from there. But the hook theme implementation should already have an idea what is being put inside the template. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
You were talking about the themer being able to work before the backend is ready. So I was thinking about if you're working on your components and you do it in the twig files and define variables, how do you serve them with, let's say dummy data or something? Or do you just hard code them like you would do in HTML and then replace, let's say, a href attribute with a variable? Or
that's a great question. So many of these design systems that I mentioned, like KSS and PatternLab, they would have their built-in way of managing the default data. So let's say if you use KSS, you can provide a JSON file of the data that you want to output for the template, and then you can just generate the style guide out of that, and it will show the data in the style guide. Yeah. So you need some design system that you are using in order to do it that in a simple way. But when you use a design system, you don't have to have any like mid-stage for putting example content inside the template. You will have the example content in a JSON file, and the template file that you have is ready to be used for inside the theme.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do you have a question? No? We have still some time for questions. I guess if we don't have any more questions, we can go home or go to the other presentation. I still want to remind you of the contribution sprints that are happening this Friday. It's a good chance to get meet other fellow contributors and to get started with contributing to Drupal 8. And there will be lots of things related to this also if you're interested. I also suggest you to evaluate my presentation on Drupal.org, not on the events at Drupal.org, on the event page, so I can be better on the next time. Thank you.
How was that for you guys?
It's pretty good. We couldn't see the code examples, but
I'm going to make sure to get them. I'm going to go up and talk to them now and get the slides and get them to you guys today.
Oh, awesome!
All right.
A lot of good stuff in that presentation.
Oh my God!
Can't wait to see.
Crazy.
They actually live streamed it, and you could see the text in our presentation better than you could see the text on the live stream. So, if that means anything. Or all the internet in Ireland just died. Okay. We'll end with Tom. Thanks again to Tom for putting that together, getting that all set up. I actually did stream. I was looking at the stream that they were actually live streaming, and our text, believe it or not, was clearer than their text because they had it focused on the presenter, and the screen was all bright and blown out. But they will be posting the video of the presentation on YouTube later today, I believe. They usually do it the same day. So I really quickly wanted to just talk about some of the things that he was actually talking about during the presentation about twig templating. I've been doing a lot of twig templating the last couple of weeks, and here. And I've found a lot of just really great stuff that comes with Twig, and it's my cup of tea as far as I'm concerned. This is really what I want. This is really what I wanted as far as developing goes for Drupal. So let's take a look really quickly here at this page. So this is an in development site that we're working on for. It's based in Drupal 8. And it's for an intranet site that we have going on. And so what we had here originally is we have this document filter list. And so originally all that this was it was a fully exposed list that said choose your document filters. It gave you these checkboxes. You could check the different items, and then you could apply the items, and then it would change what was filtered inside of the list. Now we sent this out to the executives, and they said, well, let's pretend we're an executive really quick. Numbers, make the thing.
I want to see profits go here.
Profits, margins. So let's say you're an executive, and you come to the site, and this is what you see. You're an executive, and you go, the site's broken. Well, I don't see any documents here. All I see is a bunch of checkboxes. What am I supposed to do? What if they didn't even see the apply button? And they're like, what am I supposed to do on this page? I don't see any documents. This is broken. And that's what we were told, basically, was this is broken. Not in a like dumb sense, like, oh, I don't know how the internet works. Just like when you're an executive, you're looking at this in a completely different eye. You're looking at it as, how are my end users going to see this? Because as developers, we're like, we make new, flashy, blah blah blah. But then they come in and they're like, nobody's going to know how to use this thing. And so what we needed to do was we needed to make this feature here. So we needed to take this filter and we needed to make it collapsible so that when you first come to the page, you see the documents and you see, oh, there's a little bit of text here, so I know I'm going to have to scroll down for this text. And then you also needed to know, because when you come here, there are certain default filters that are attached. So mockup, overview, and use case are the defaults that are attached here. So that's why we have this current filter here, and we have this collapsible list that when you choose your new items, it not only gets rid of the old items, or when you hit apply, collapses up and shows you your new filtered items and shows you that the list changed. So you see that something is happening here. So this is, let's go back to the very beginning here. I'm going to comment out all of this code. Try to comment out all of that code, and that's not going to work. So I'm actually going to comment out the code like this. No, that's not going to work either. I'm just going to delete it. This isn't Git, right? Because it's not. No, it's definitely Git. So let's go here. Let's delete this, and this is what this used to be. Well, actually, it was a little bit different. It was, let's get rid of you, let's get rid of you, uncomment you, and get rid of that. So when you first come into this template, so this is a twig template. Let me no, to configuration, color scheme. That is not easier to read. So let's just pretend I didn't do that. Back. Okay. realized I was editing the Bootstrap default theme. So that's the thing that you shouldn't be doing. You should not be modifying your Bootstrap, so your base themes. Let's increase that one more, and we'll hide sidebar. Okay, so this is the default for displaying an exposed form in Drupal 8. So this is the classy themes template for displaying the form. So it just says display the form. Then Bootstrap extends that. It overwrites that. So previously where we had form, so this is actually what Bootstrap does. So this is what Bootstrap does by default. So it just takes that form and it wraps it inside of this little div here. So div class form inline clearfix. So what this does, this actually might be base theme. No, this is the so this is the default twig template for the view for exposed view. So Bootstrap says, all right, we're using form inline, and clearfix. Those are classes that we have in Bootstrap that will apply to our form elements. Then we load the form. Now, what actually ends up happening here, so if I save this and I come in and I reload this page. So this is by default what displays when you come to the page. So that extra added functionality is all something that I integrated into there. So when I hit agenda and this and that, unless if you're up here and you hit apply, you're not going to know that anything changed. So I said, all right, I need to take these elements and I need to put them in another place. So there's this module called devel that will actually help you sort of get into the meat and potatoes of how your theme is being generated, the variables that are available to it, and all that stuff. And it uses this new thing called Kint. If you've used DPM before, Kint is the replacement for DPM, which was basically it just dumped all of the variables for each template. And so now if I enable Kint form and I refresh my page, we're going to see a little bar show up right above my document filters. And we'll actually see now that I can expand on this, and if I increase my font size here, now let's not pretend we're an executive anymore. Let's make it bigger. This is all of the variables and data that is available to me using that form variable. And so what ends up happening is the form variable then prints out multiple different twig templates. So if I actually did an inspect source on this, and we go to expose form, collapse that, inspect on here. Too much. So if we look, so I have this twig debug on. So when he was talking about needing to have your debug turned on in order to see some of the stuff in order to do your development. So I have twig debug turned on. We're not going to get into how to set that all up right now. It's a bit of a long. It's a short journey, but it's a bit too high level for what we're getting into here. So here we have, right above here, so this is the Bootstrap template views exposed form.html.twig. So this is showing me what actual template is being used here. So now I'm loading all this Kint stuff. So here's the JavaScript and the style to style up the Kint drop downs. And then here's the actual content for templates. So here's form inline, clear fix, like we saw in that other template. But then you'll see we actually have another template here. So this is Bootstrap templates, Bootstrap panel. So what's happening is the form is overriding, excuse me. So what was originally happening was field set.html.twig was originally being used, and Bootstrap provided a new Twig template for that, which is Bootstrap panel.html.twig. So it's taken all field sets and created this panel around them. So that's why we have all this panel selection here, panel heading, panel title, panel body, all that stuff. And that's all well and great. But what I actually needed was this content here in the form actions. So I couldn't just overwrite the Bootstrap panel or another template that had all those things in it, because what ended up happening was, if I go back here, this content here is in a completely different area than this content, the apply button, the reset button, all those things. They were in a completely different area. The only way that I could get to both of those from the template area was to go the one template up higher. So that's why we have the views exposed filter. And so now I look into this Kint form area and I say, okay, I actually see that if I go into here, I can see that I have attributes, I have information, I have theme stuff, I have all these different things. And so digging through, I said, all right, I need to look for, so I see the submit button here. I'm like, oh, well, that's not actually what I need. But then I see actions. I say, oh, okay, so these actions, if I dig into actions, I'll see that I have a submit and a reset button right here. So that, for me, is the actions for the theme. Those are the only two actions that I have. So this is all sort of previous knowledge of knowing that I'm going to have the submit and the reset buttons inside of here, so I can sort of look for that. You can also do a search on the page to find what you're looking for. And that's actually how I found the first thing. So what I did was I said, all right, I know that choose your document filters is text that I need to look for. So instead of just clicking on the box, I click on the plus sign, and then it expands the entire thing. So this is just every single thing on the entire site. So if I say choose your, oh, well, here it is. So here's the info for it, but that doesn't have all of my filters in it. So I can see here that I have one of 3 options. So now I'm going to hit the next button. I'm going to see here, okay, so choose your document filters. I'm going to scroll way up till I get to the header of this, which is way up. Actually, skipping ahead. This is how I found these pieces. So skipping ahead, the two that I found are form.filter and form.actions. So we looked at that action. We looked at the actions. Now, if I come back into here, I can actually collapse these and find filter really quickly. So here's filter. So filter has all of those crazy number of items underneath it. So if I look inside the filter here real quick, I'll see that it's checkboxes. I have all the different checkboxes, so the 81, 2, 75, 3, 71, all this stuff. These are all of the options that are in here. So if I actually check on 81, I can see that it was for the checkbox for agenda. So knowing now that I'm in the right place, I'm going to say, all right, I want to load form.filter and form.actions inside of one panel body using a Bootstrap panel, so that both of those open and close when I click on the text to filter the document list. And so that is just raw text that I added inside of here, and now I have this, the DT is how we build the heading for the panel, and then I give it an anchor tag so that it will actually open and close the correct panel. Now, Twig has these little filters that you can attach to variables, and so this is one that's provided just by Drupal. So it's not a core Twig filter, but this saved my life the other day, because I needed, the panels were not opening and closing. I couldn't get it to work, and clean ID, what it does is it strips out space characters, replaces them with hyphens, strips out special characters like question marks and ampersands and all that other stuff, and makes it as if it were a clean class in clean ID in HTML. There's also clean class, so if you're using variables for classes as well. So what was happening was I was using it without clean ID, and it was adding spaces and question marks, and Bootstrap didn't know what to do with that. So I grabbed the Drupal data selector, which gives me a nice long ID that I can, or a nice long class that I can actually hit with this. And that, if I go into here, I actually added that class to the container, so I can target that with CSS if I need to. And then what I also needed to do was, so let's save this here. So let's save this here. So now, just very quickly, I have a collapsible list of all of my filters. When I check the boxes, apply. Now I'd like it to shrink back up, but I'm using the default better exposed filters Ajax, and it actually reloads the filter as well, which is why the filter ends up closed, because it's actually Ajaxing in all of the content, including the new filter, which is kind of crappy. I haven't quite figured out how to override that yet, but that I'm sure that will come. And that's a nice thing here. Like, this is all new stuff that you end up learning when you're learning Drupal 8. But now I don't know what filters have been applied here. So that's where this line of code comes in. So what I did is I created a new div that's just constrained to the width of the content, and actually you can write loops, you can write if statements, all of those kind of things inside of your templates, and just using Twig now rather than writing a whole bunch of logic and all this stuff inside of here. So what we did was we said that we're going to create a variable called choice, and we're going to set it to each form.filter value. So in this case, form.filter value equals every box that's checked. So agenda, forms, letter template, but the value is going to be the number value. So it's saying for every one of these that's checked, I'm going to grab the title of that from the area, and that's why we feed in choice here. So choice comes out at 78. So this says form.filter 78's title is agenda. Form.filter 151's title is meeting minutes. And so what it does is it actually just prints that out. That's what the double curly braces are here. So this is logic, anything that has the % in there, and then or it's code that doesn't get printed out. But then the double curly braces prints it out. But then right afterwards, I actually have an if statement that uses a special command called last in loop. So loop has 6 special commands. There's last, first, index, that you can actually print out the number that you're within the loop. But this one, I just wanted to print a comma after each one, except the last one. So I say, if it's not the last in the loop, then print a comma. But if it is, then it just skips this and goes on. So now if I save this and come back into my page and refresh, we have the current filters that are applied. Now I could also do, like, I could put that if statement inside of, and I probably will because that's just how I am. It has to look perfect kind of thing. But I could put that same if on there that says, if the number of choices is less than 1, then it's just, or greater than 1, then add an S at the end and get the parentheses out of there and call it a day. But here we have 1 comma, 2 comma, and then we don't have the last comma added into here. And again, this updates depending on what you check. So if I check these 6 items and then hit apply, all of those items are now listed. Now this might not be the best way to present this, but the feature now exists, and now I can style it however I want to do it. And this takes care of the issue of, well, what the heck am I doing? You know, what is this page? All I see, you know, is this giant list of checkboxes.
So you're still working on this page then?
Yeah. With the exception of the the current filters, everything else is done.
So that filter panel is open by default or closed by default?
Closed by default.
Closed by default.
So what we do is we provide a list of like general overview documents when you first come to the page, but then you can, because we have, like this comes into a situation that Justin and I ran into like last year, where we said, well, how many things are we going to have displayed on a page at once? Do we need a pager, right? And we said, well, what if there's 50 items? So what? It's 50 items. It's 10K of code. Well, we have about 890 documents on this page, so we didn't want to load 890 rows of text with varying levels of description. So we have this filter in there to allow you to filter it down. So what we did is we said, these are the overview documents, the reference documents that are most used on the site. We're going to display these first, and then you can filter down and choose the different options.
What was the thought process behind putting a filter at the top of the page versus like in a sidebar or something like that?
So the current design doesn't have any sidebar in it. So like right on the home page, you have, you know, this you know, full widthy kind of, you know, section here that has to be. We don't have any sort of sidebar. Originally, we had discussed putting a sidebar on there, but it ended up we ended up scrapping that idea and just keeping it up at the top. But we're always looking for improvements. So.
And my only concern is that, you know, from a visual order of priority, I can understand how the executive would come to this and say, you know, where's my documents? Like, I thought I was going to get documents, but instead I got, you know, this form essentially to fill out. And I think technically you've solved it, but I still think that your order of priority, or the order of precedence on this page, puts a very high weight to submitting a document and filtering above the actual document. I mean, it's just where it's at on the page. So, you know, I'm not sure how you visually solve that other than a sidebar, or, I mean, you really kind of want to give the user that list of documents as the most, you know, the highest priority on the page.
Right. Yeah.
So, but that's fancy.
So that's the nice thing about doing something, you know, like this within Twig, is you have this capability to really fully maximize all of the variables that are available on the page, and it's nice to do that. And with you know, comments like that about, you know, well, how, you know, is this the best way to present it? All we have to do is just style this now, because the functionality is now there. We can put this wherever we wanted to. We could have the whole thing set up, because this page really screams for a sidebar. Because I mean, you see how long some of these text lines go. That's a long amount of text. So there are always these options that we can expand out once we have the functionality that we need. So
what about a document icon, like a glyphicon or something like that, for a document, just throw in the front
here,
like before the links or for each link?
Oh yeah, we tried that. There's lots and lots and lots. So it's just like, here's 800 PDF icons.
Yeah. Are they all PDFs too?
Mostly. So let's talk about Drupal 8. So we've been talking a little bit, so we discussed a little bit before we got together about, before Tom started sending us some awesome stuff from Drupal. And thanks to Tom for that. That Drupal 7 just had its dot releases, but Drupal 8 follows the semantic versioning pattern, which is a major dot minor dot hotfix release. So that's why we have 8.2.0. So currently, the latest release of Drupal is 8.1.10. I think, yeah. So that is The 8.0 release had a feature release which added some additional features, but hopefully didn't break anything with the 8.0 to 8.1. So 8.2 introduces additional features and some bug fixes, but the way that they're introducing new features into Drupal core now is through this idea of experimental modules. So when Lorelei was talking about the maybe it's Laura, I think it's Laurie, sorry. When he was talking about BigPipe being an experimental module, what that is that is a module that is supported officially by the Drupal core team, but it's not quite yet ready for prime time. So that even experimental modules have their own release cycle. So they have alpha, beta, and release candidate releases as well. So currently no modules that have been in experimental state have made it into core yet. So 8.2 releases two big modules. So the place blocks module as an experimental module, and three. So place blocks, what do they call it? The task bar, toolbar or something. It's a new module that hides settings for blocks within like an off-canvas bar on the side of the screen. And the third one is one called content moderation, which I'm very excited about, but it is not ready for prime time. Basically, content moderation is a direct port of the workbench moderation module, which was great in Drupal 7, very buggy in Drupal 8. We've actually made the decision to drop content moderation, which if you have content moderation enabled in Drupal 8 right now, it is a difficult process to take out. You actually have to manually remove your, you have to manually purge out items that are in content moderation from your database. So if you guys get into a situation where you need to be removing content moderation from your Drupal 8 sites, just send me an email and we'll get you set up there. And I have most of the process hopefully down pat. It's not fun, but it'll work. But eventually that will be in a release state, and everybody will be happy with it. And I'm gonna put this on. Stop sending me notifications, phone. So that's the idea here, is that when 8.2 releases, 8.1 doesn't get any more security fixes. You have to then upgrade to 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, and they have this nice release schedule. So here is the 8.2 actual supported release will be coming out early next week. Then the beta for 8.3 will be coming out in late January. So there will be multiple releases on Drupal core. So it's introducing this capability that was never in Drupal 7. So Drupal 7 shipped without support for entities. So you had to sort of bolt entities onto Drupal 7. And then your other contributed modules had to support entities individually as well. So not only did they have to support the original Drupal setup, but if you wanted entities, then you had to bolt on entities support onto there, and then require entities for your module. So Drupal 8 did away with that. Everything is an entity in Drupal 8, including configuration, including users. Everything is an entity. It actually makes the capability to import things and work within things a lot easier. So Drupal 8 gives us the capability to add new features to Drupal, which never really happened in Drupal 7. Drupal 7 was basically bug fixes and then contrib modules. So that's why contrib modules were so big. That's why views became such a huge thing that was, a requirement basically for any new site was to have views. So long story short, Drupal 8 is introducing lots and lots of new features as time goes on, and you are free to try them out whenever you want. Just know that they are in different stages of readiness. BigPipe is the only one that has gotten out of alpha. BigPipe went into beta as of 8.2. Still not fully ready for prime time, as we learned on trying to import JavaScript libraries within BigPipe. If you want to know more about BigPipe, feel free to give a little, just take a look at it there. So what I'm going to do here really quickly is I'm going to do copy -R. Here's my okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start up a whole new Drupal 8 site using Vagrant here. And so the easiest way to do it so we're going to just open this really quickly. We're going to what? Oh, I didn't see it. Just selected them all. Call that. So what we're going to do is we're going to, in our main folder structure here, we're actually going to, you know what? I've already got it downloaded. So let's go with Drupal 8.2 release candidate 2. Let's live on the wild side. And we're going to do this the right way. In order to copy files, we have to do application. That makes sense. Copy those into sites. We're going to create a new folder. Call it form. Don't give me the goes away. Okay, so now what we have is in our folder here. So I put everything inside of a Drupal folder inside of my user folder. And we have this sites folder and NYS forum. And so right here, this is Drupal 8 core, 8.2 release candidate 2. Then I have my VM system inside of here, which is configured to run. I have a host name configured, my machine name is configured, IP addresses, and so I tell it where my code is located and where it's going to be on the VM, and give it some memory, give it some CPUs, and configure it for PHP 5.6. So from here, I'm just going to do a vagrant up, which is going to oh, that's not what I meant to do. would not recommend powering off your VMs. I would recommend shutting them down unless you're not going to ever use them again. So what this system does is this system is based off of Drupal VM. I think we've discussed this before. I know Justin talked about it when he talked about the Acquia Bolt program. And basically what this does is this installs basically installs an Ubuntu virtual box on your machine that sets up all of the necessary requirements to run Drupal. It also sets up your database, it sets up your file structure, it sets up all the things that you need in order to actually run a Drupal site. And so while this goes on in the background, we'll talk a little bit about something. Does anybody have any questions while this is setting up?
Why did you guys decide on VM versus Docker in the end?
So right now, so Drupal VM versus Docker. Docker is really great, but there's a lot of additional configuration that I need to configure in order to get Docker to work. So Docker is a containerized system that allows you to run different containers that are pre-configured. So where we're setting up all the stuff inside of Vagrant right now, Docker basically has this image that's fully configured, ready to go. I've used Drupal VM in the past. I have all the configurations all ready to go for it, and so it was just a simple setup of this is just how we're going to run this thing for right now. There's two things. So first is Drupal VM is looking to convert to Docker sometime down the line, as well as once I have a little bit more time on my hands, I could possibly set up all the same configuration that we've set up for Drupal VM onto Docker instead. Now, the nice thing about Docker is, so what's happening here, right, is that I'm going through all this installation process. I'm ensuring all the packages are installed, all this stuff. This takes maybe, depending on the speed of your machine and if you have the box already downloaded, anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes to set up a new VM. Docker downloads the image and it's up and running, and after it downloads, it's up and running in anywhere between 5 to 15 seconds. So it's like, here's your new Docker image, boom, up and running, fully ready to go, Drupal's installed, everything's ready to go. And that's great, but right now I don't have the capability I don't have the time, really, to put together a Docker piece. If you want to build it for me, I'll
Vice versa too.
I'd be excited. What's that?
Yeah, if you get the time, I would love to use it too.
And so this is the nice thing about our community here is that when we come up with something cool, we share it with everybody because it's that important. Like this is actually a very minor modified version of what Justin built at State Police for our team. It's all right. It's just Drupal console, so that may still work. So let's check. Nope. Give me a 500 error on Drupal console installer. So really quickly, what I wanted to talk about while this is installing is Slack. So we have this idea of sharing our knowledge across teams and across the state. Like I'm at the AG's office now. I'm not part of ITS, but I still have lots of contacts within ITS, and we're also working on Drupal. So with the Office of State Comptroller, I believe, is also on Drupal. I haven't talked to many of those guys recently, but the idea being that we are a community here. So we have this Slack group, Upstate Web group on Slack, and just recently somebody had posted a couple of other Slack channels to join, and I would urge you, if you're doing anything in Drupal, that you join up these Slack channels and at least just idle in them. Turn off your notifications, whatever, just idle in them, and then as soon as you run into a problem, obviously go to Google. If something doesn't come up quickly in Google, post it inside of one of these channels. So this is the Drupal channel. This is the Twig channel. I have received so many things to help me ship my new Drupal 8 site that it's I can't believe that I haven't joined this thing before. Let me get the links out to everybody. It's a pretty nice one. Oh, so here's a picture of Tom at DrupalCon playing up at the Drupal Freenode. I think this was when he was playing. They were playing U2, like to the sound of U2, to the music of U2. They were song. Let me see here. I have the URL. Here it is. So the first one is drupalslack.herokuapp.com. The other one is drupaltwig/slack.herokuapp.com. And I'll be sending these out to the listserv, as well as posting them onto the website where we post the meetings and the videos, because these are just so incredibly important. And I'm not even sure if this is still working. No, that's not what I wanted. So our sign up isn't working anymore. Heroku must have done something to it. But I'll send out a link to anybody in the listserv who wants to join the Slack group. It's not an official state-hosted Slack group. It's just one that I run locally for not even locally. You can be anywhere and be on our Slack as long as you want to get information. That's fine. Giving information is even better. Let's see. It looks like there's an issue with Drupal console. So we're not going to build this specific machine. But what we can do is we can remove our image. Let's take a look at. Let's pretend that worked. So simplytest.me, simply test me, is a really great site that allows you to test out individual modules to see if you're going to like them, and it gives you full admin access to a brand new Drupal site. So here is an example of, so let's pretend that Vagrant up worked, and now we're on a core Drupal site. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to save and continue after you select your language. Now you have standard or minimal install. I would suggest going with standard. I wouldn't suggest going with minimal, just because you get obviously less things when you install minimal. I don't believe you even get base themes enabled. You start off with nothing. So here's where you enter your database name. So if you're using something on the same server, you're creating your database, you're just going to put in your name here. If you're having a database that's somewhere else, so say you have another server, you can actually go into your advanced options. You can change the host that it's hosted on, whatever port they're using. If you have a different table, a table name prefix that's inside of there, Like if you have like a naming convention or something with your database team, you can do that. So by default, Simply Test Me is all set up. And it's going to go through the site and it's going to install all the items inside of it. So these are all the modules that are going to be enabled. So we'll have a little bit of time here where I can actually show you some of these new experimental modules and how they work. So you can see sort of what's coming down the pipe. It's actually some really nice stuff is being developed for Drupal 8.2. So the content moderation I had mentioned, that adds multiple states of unpublished. So you can have draft, needs review, you can have executive review, you can have ready for PIO or digital information officer or sign off. All these different states before something actually ends up being published to the website. So here's where you're going to give your site name. So we're going to call this NYS Forum Plan B Special, because this was Plan B since the Drupal VM didn't work. Username and password is going to be admin because that's incredibly secure. Default country, yes, this is a global distribution, so United States is where it belongs in the U's. Default time zone, America, New York, and we're just going to say continue. So here it is. You are set up when you first come to the site and Simply Test Me. You're already logged in as an admin. So let's take a look at these new modules in 8.2. So I'm just going to type in. Oh, that's not. So if I collapse core, I see core experimental. So Big Pipe, this is a way that it breaks up your site content into downloadable chunks. And it works especially well for logged-in users, because by default, logged-in user stuff isn't cached very, very well, if at all. I know in Drupal 7 it wasn't cached at all. What BigPipe does is it actually takes all those pieces, breaks them out into smaller chunks, so that you will progressively load in content across the site, rather than white screen, boom, everything's loaded, which is how it works in Drupal 7. Content moderation, this is where it adds the multiple states of publish, so we'll enable that. We'll enable the place box module, settings tray, that's what it's called. So place blocks and settings tray, so we'll install that. Nope, that's not what I do, I guess. So we're going to install these modules. You'll see this note, experimental modules are for testing purposes only. And when you actually go to the link that it talks to you about, so this is where I got all that information that I told you guys about as far as alpha, beta, release candidates. So you'll see this is the current status of all of those modules. So outside in is the old name for settings tray. I thought it was the dumbest name for a module I've ever heard of, but they changed it luckily to settings tray. So here is the new setup. You don't notice much different here, but what you see is now there's a new button up here that says Edit. There's a new element here that says Place Block, and inside of your content types, there is now a new setting called Manage Moderation, which isn't here by default. So what you do is you enable different moderation states. And so what you have now is you have archived and draft, which are unpublished states. And then you have a published state of published and a default state that you can set. Now, in the content moderation settings, you can add as many unpublished new states, as many published new states as you want, and then use that however you want to use that. But let's take a look at this edit screen here now. So this is the outside in module, or the settings tray module. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on this, and now I can see I can actually change the page title for this page. So I'm going to say my title. I'm going the title, and I'm going to save the page title. So now I don't see anything on here for some reason, probably because this is a block or something. Oh, this, yeah. So here's a bit of strangeness. So, and I think what this is as a module is this is a tool for other module developers. So by default, all that we're seeing is changing the name of a block and any block settings that have been exposed. So in this instance right here, this site branding, so when I change this to my cool title, this is actually the title of the block, not the title of the actual title. Now here, if I go to the NYS forum Plan B special, this has been exposed, so site name here has been exposed, so I can say my cool new site with a slogan that says the Plan B special. Oh, we'll call it the coolest backup strategy. Spelled right, that's okay. So now you actually see my cool new site and the coolest backup strategy, boom, done. So rather than going to config and site settings and all the stuff to edit those things, it's all available right here. So here, if I click on this, this is the search. So I can actually change the search here to no. Save the search form. And now this is changed to no. So certain things are available in certain areas. Now module makers can say, all right, well, I want panels to now allow me to use this settings tray to change any sort of content for my panels. So panels has its own sort of built-in sidebar kind of thing. But now they can say, well, instead of using that, I can implement this sidebar. And now this sidebar becomes this new area where people are able to leverage these types of settings. Let's turn off edit mode. Let's go back into place block mode. So in place block, what I have here is it's showing me every area of my site that is defined as a region in my theme. So here is the above header, or I think this is site top and this is site bottom, possibly. But let's say we just wanted to add something right in the sidebar here. So I'm going to hit the plus button, and now there's a difference between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8, where if you added a block in Drupal 7, it showed up in the block setting as disabled by default, and then you just moved it up, and that was that. But with Drupal 8, they've actually hidden all new blocks into this new place block screen. So place block by default, if we close this out, we go into structure, block layout. Here is the place block. So I have to place a block manually everywhere on here. But if I come back here and I hit place block, it's going to say, all right, here are all your regions that you can place the block in, so you know exactly where the region is. You don't have to remember that I named it sidebar 5, light blue background, whatever. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, just really quickly, a site branding here. So here's the site branding. We'll display the title, site logo, name, slogan, and the region is already populated. So this is sidebar second. So how would I have known that this was sidebar second versus sidebar first? I don't know how I would. So now if I hit save, here is my cool new site branding thing. It's all white because this is white up on the top, and it's the same CSS that's being applied. So those are the 3 new modules that are included in Drupal 8.2. Again, they're experimental. If I showed you what my site looked like when I enabled these modules right now, I'd go home crying because it's terrible. It does something weird to my CSS. It makes the whole background this color, even though it shouldn't be. Lots of weird stuff. So we've sort of learned how to install Drupal 8. We had a cool DrupalCon session. Looked at some new modules in 8.2. Talked about Semver. I'm really going to stress here that we need people who can talk about anything at all. We really need people that can come here and stand up in front of the audience and teach something, because I can't keep doing the whole thing each time. So yeah, please reach out to me if you can be any help at all. And I'll send out all the information for the Slack groups for sign up. And yeah, so next month we were hoping to get into something on accessibility in Drupal. We have some people from State Ed coming in to talk about some accessibility stuff, keeping it accessible in Drupal. Tom actually attended that session that we talked about in the beginning of the meeting, that making the Drupal themes accessible. So he can have something to add to that. All right, anybody have anything to add? Great. Well, thanks for coming, and we'll see you guys next month.